當路得及拿俄米都去猶大伯利恆嘅時候，
When Ruth and Naomi went back to Bethlehem in Judea.
第1章22節講，都係冬秋吉大麥嘅時候。
And the Bible tells us in verse 1 that it was the time for the barley harvest.
路得記有真在秋杜坎嘅代志。
There are a lot of coincidences in the book of Ruth.
第1章
In chapter 1.
都去秋杜坎都是冬小吉收成嘅時候。
And when they went home, it was actually the time of the barley harvest.
男士就休死咯。
Otherwise, they would die of famine.
第2章
Chapter
你
2.
秋杜坎都去到波阿蘇嘅陳隊裏
It
面。
was quite coincidental for her to go into the fields of Boaz.
男士未追到波阿斯。
Otherwise, she wouldn't have met Boaz.
第3章
Chapter 3.
波阿斯竟然是拿俄米嘅親，
Boaz, they discovered, was actually a kinsman of Naomi.
嗰是真親嘅親。
And it was really like a very close relative.
男士波阿斯無通真親人嘅責任，但係照顧 Ruth and 拿俄米。
Otherwise, Boaz wouldn't be able to do his responsibility as a kinsman to look after Naomi and Ruth.
第4章
Chapter 4.
先講即個第一親嘅人都敬敬即個所在。
The Bible tells us that this person who was the closest relative passed by that place.
原來有一個竟然比波阿斯更加親嘅
There
人。
was actually a person who was a closer relative than Boaz.
當波阿斯喺解決這樣大事嘅時候，
When Boaz wanted to resolve the
這
matter.
個人都敬敬。
Now, this person happened to pass by.
嗱，這個人嚟出國咧，
And if this person was actually overseas,
這樣大事就無通解決。
then they wouldn't be able to solve the issue.
你記住，一擺、兩擺、三擺、四擺嘅秋杜坎。
Now, remember, this was like one coincidence, second coincidence, a third and a fourth coincidence.
這就唔是秋杜坎，
These are not coincidences at all.
是上帝安排。
These are actually part of God's plan.
因為當 Ruth 專心投靠話嗰上帝嘅時陣，
Because when Ruth wholeheartedly put her trust in the
上
Lord,
帝就給佢開路，
and God opened the way for her.
叫做幫助人。
May God help
你哋
us.
有先過呢個上帝。
You need to know, to learn to trust in your
當
God.
這兩個寡婦都去猶大嘅時陣，
And when these two widows went back to the land of Judah,
頭一個問題，
the first problem,
咱食什麼？
what are we going to eat?
冇啦，冇通食就休死。
And if we have nothing to eat, then we will die of
這是
hunger.
人生第一基本嘅需要。
This is one of the most basic needs of life.
咱食什麼？
What are we going to eat?
這個時路得及拿俄米講一句話。
And it was during this time that Ruth said to Naomi,
後掛見 Let me go,
let me go to the fields.
let me go。
You got him.
請問
Let me
現在
ask
是神啊，肯定神啊？
you, who needs who at this point in time?
拿俄米肯定路得照顧，還是路得肯定拿俄米去照
Was
顧？
it Naomi who needed Ruth to take care of her, or was it Ruth who needed Naomi to take care of her?
卻麥穗唔是很簡單嘅代志。
You know, picking leftover grains isn't an easy task.
拿俄米一個老人，
Naomi was an old woman.
你講一個老人去卻物件看賣，
And if you get an old woman to pick up something,
少年人唔知呀啦。
you know, young people, we don't understand
真
this.
罪嚟，這有人我講一句話，
Many years ago, someone told me,
你講牧師話嚟呢個教會真艱苦。
"As pastor, it's very difficult to come to your church."
我講什麼艱苦啊？
I asked the person why.
特別樓梯啊！
I have to climb the stairs.
我燒嚟燒去燒冇啊！
Now, I was really thinking about it, and I couldn't
我
quite
係教會有冇
understand.
樓梯？
Is there stairs here in our church?
我特攞冇樓梯啊！
Where is our stairs?
你講話溝啊！
And the person replied saying, "It's
你
outside."
神啊在呀話溝嚟溝逼樓梯溝你哋咪等，有幾陣樓梯？
Who among you knows how many steps of stairs we have before you get up here to the
啥睇啊？
church? Who knows how many
咱唔
steps
知
we
啊
have? We don't know.
根本都唔知啊！
Why don't we know?
咱是跳入嚟啊！
Because we actually hopped in.
那少年家跳入嚟啊！
Young people, we just hopped in.
根本冇去生啊！
We don't even count the number of
我
steps.
跳緊去生看咪，
But I intentionally counted the number of steps.
六陣，
It's actually 6 steps.
嗰是三陣，比嘅嗰三陣，
It's actually 3 steps, and then you have a landing, and then 3 more steps.
六陣樓梯
6 steps of
是
stairs.
什麼問題啊？
What's the problem with that?
如果冇法嚟啊，
And the person said, I can't
真
count.
咁個逼樓梯嚟
It's
啊
very！difficult for me to climb the stairs.
哎呀，路上我看到時代人嚟嘅時陣，到嘅時陣真辛苦。
Sometimes when I see some elderly people, when they come to church and when they go home, it really is very painful
所以
for
我
them.
講下班啦，創成嘅禮拜堂，浪中有電梯，放心放心。
So I said that the next time when we build our new church building, we need to have elevators.
少年嘅唔知啊，
So young people don't understand this.
老得講，何我去卻麥穗，好你食，
And Ruth said, let me go to the fields and pick up the leftover grains for you.
這個真冇容易啊！
And this is not easy.
你嗱愛一個人嚟鬥相共，
If you want a person to help you,
加上你嘅態度是真正謙卑，
usually your attitude is very humble.
請你鬥相共。
Please help me.
但係現在唔是老的傾應老阿咪鬥相共，是老阿咪傾應老的咁咪鬥相
But
共。
now it's not Ruth who needed Naomi's help, but actually it was Naomi who needed Ruth's help.
而真正謙卑，真正有禮數及呢個時代人講 ，Let me go。
She was very polite, she was very humble and respectful, saying that let me go.
有一擺咱中國一個真正出名嘅先生叫做孔子，
One time this very famous Chinese teacher, Confucius,
佢學生問呢一個問題，
his student asked him a
佢
question.
講先生啊，什麼叫做孝？
Teacher, what is the meaning of filial piety?
孔子講到人嘅理，
And Confucius said these two
佢講
characters.
孝就是世人。
And Confucius said, 孝 is
是男，什麼意思？是
What
男
is the
呢？
meaning of this 是男？
唔通好你的父母看你面色，
Do not allow your parents to see your countenance.
你看咪？
Take a look at this.
當父母年老嘅時陣，
When your parents are elderly,
是神啊欠神啊，欠應神啊，
who would need who?
是你欠應父母，是父母欠應你。
Do you need your parents' help, or would it be your parents who need your help?
他說是父母欠應咱，
It would be usually our parents who need our help
佢老啦嘛，
because
佢
they're
老啊
already old.
唔會曉咯啊。
They cannot do things on their own.
頂得個社會就是 internet，
And used to be that we only write letters before. Now it's an internet age,
都唔會曉 internet，
and they don't know how to use the
叫你寫一個
internet.
post internet，
And they ask you to write a letter, and you have to do it on the internet.
佢叫你咯啊。
And they have to ask you for help.
什麼時候？
And what is filial
當你
piety?
父母需要你鬥相嘅時陣。
But when your parents need your help,
唔通好你嘅父母看你嘅面色做人，
do not allow your parents to see your countenance.
有陣冇看喜，
Sometimes you're not happy,
發父母，
and you shout at your parents.
伊蚊都好父母錢嘅時陣，
And even though when you give money to your
嗱，
parents,
好啲錢啦，好啲食啦，
and you say, here's money for you,
這個唔是孝，
that is not having filial
這個
piety.
真正有孝順嘅囝兒，
A son or a child who is really
當父母有需要嘅時
very
陣，
filially pious, that when a parent has any need,
唔通好你嘅父母看你嘅面色嘅做人，
you should not allow your parents to see your countenance.
這個就禮數。
And that is what being respectful
碌
is.
就是安尼，
And Ruth was like that.
當老後你需要伊嘅時陣，
When Naomi needed her,
伊真正謙卑嚟到伊嘅頭前
she very humbly came before her presence.
，Let me go，
Hogwaki.
感謝上帝。
Thank God.
你是唔是個有禮數嘅人呢？
And are you a respectful person?
你對頂下同你有權柄嘅人，你就對。
How do you regard those person who's your superiors or have
你就
authority over
對
you?
嗰啲鼻頭叫做同輩嘅人，你就對。
And how do you regard those people who are of the same generation as you are?
你對你下卡人，你就對。
And what about how do you regard your subordinate?
佢是你嘅工人，
And he or she is your worker.
你叫佢創大字就對。
And when you give instructions to them, how do you do it?
你就知你是唔是個有禮數嘅人，
Are you a person who's respectful?
叫做幫助人。
May God help us.
Ruth 我哋一個真有禮數嘅人。
Ruth shows us that she was a very respectful
第
person.
二咧
Second,
，Ruth 一個真正溫困嘅人。
Ruth was a very diligent person.
咱嚟看這兩節嘅聖經。
Take a look at these two verses of scripture.
波阿數問這個監管小官嘅僕人講：這個是神啊嘅女主。監管小官嘅人對僕人講：這是摩押女主。軍隊老後面對摩押到來，伊講：請你和我軍隊小官嘅人來卻拍存落嘅麥穗。伊對查基到現在，除了啲綁來借得淡薄啊，常常喺這個所在。
Boaz asked the foreman of his harvesters, whose young woman is that? The foreman replied, she is the Moabitess who came back from Moab with Ruth, Naomi. She said, please let me glean and gather among the sheaves behind the harvesters. She went into the field and has worked steadily from morning till now, except for a short rest in the shelter.